A very important story from the New York Times regarding Mr. Larry Kudlow, a familiar villain of this show. Let's throw that tear sheet up there on the screen. As the virus read, reports of Trump administration's private briefing fueled a sell-off. And Krystal, this is enraging because this happened February 25th. Many of you might remember it. We covered it actively when Larry Kudlow went on CNBC and said, quote, "The virus is contained." He said it's pretty close to airtight. Foolish. We all knew it was stupid.
Right.
But that was still what the public message of the United States was at the time. That very same day, he held a briefing along with another White House economic advisor for some members of the board of directors for the Hoover Institution, which is a Stanford-connected, more right-leaning nonprofit institution. So of those board of directors, one of them was actually connected to the hedge fund industry. And in that board meeting, during that briefing, Mr. Kudlow, this is from the New York Times, delivered a more ambiguous private message. He asserted that the virus was contained in the U.S. to date, but now we just don't know. This is a document that was then written up by one of these hedge fund consultants as a result of the meeting and was then circulated at the highest levels of Wall Street. And what they did is they quoted another economic advisor who was present at that meeting saying, hey, look, we have no idea what the economic ramifications of this are going to be. Essentially, they delivered, look, it's not like a smoking gun. They were like, oh, it's horrible. It's not like a Woodward tape level bad.
Right.
But what it is that they had a different message for rich people than they did for the American public. And those rich people, using their access, summarized that information, distributed it amongst other rich people who sold stocks at the very top to make sure that they didn't lose out on the bottom that eventually hit March. Now,
and that is
corruption.
And we saw it with other senators.
Yes.
Who would go out and be like, oh, it's fine,
right,
and we've got it under control. And then privately, they're selling off their, protecting themselves. So you see how, look, the wealthy had access to this information. They were able to profit off of what they saw, the accurate information coming. Meanwhile, the American people are left in the dark. And there was this question from the beginning of Trump and Kudlow and all these people downplaying the virus. Were they just deluding themselves? Were they getting bad information? Or were they actively misrepresenting the truth to the American people? And this is yet another indication that they knew what was going on and they didn't tell you. And that's what the Woodward tapes really ultimately proved as well. At the same time that the president is literally going out and being like, it's just like the flu, no big deal. He's telling Bob Woodward, it's so much worse than the flu. It's so much more deadly. This is terrible. It affects everyone. It affects young people too. And not providing that information to the American people. I mean, that is one of the most damning reports that we've seen out of this administration, one of the most damning instances that we've seen, because maybe you could forgive incompetence or wanting to delude yourself, but to actively lie to the American people and misrepresent what you know to be the truth is outrageous.
No, it is. And look, this is paired with another story that came out yesterday from Li Fang, and I can't pronounce her name, but I will make an attempt. Over at The Intercept. Let's throw that up there on the screen. And it's called China's Man in Washington. So what they try and detail here is that Eric Branstad, who is the son of Terry Branstad, who until last week was the Trump administration's U.S. ambassador to China, before that, governor of Iowa, and before that, a longtime friend of Xi Jinping, which is why he was picked for the job. They're sister cities like Wuhan province and Iowa because of corn and all. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
So
hogs, a lot of hogs.
Yeah, there's a lot of, yes, exactly. There's a lot of intra-commerce that goes between the two, which has actually screwed us for a long time. But Terry Branstad's son worked at the Commerce Department until 2017. After he left, Li Fang and them show, through Freedom of Information Act requests and others, reporting that Eric Branstad actually used his position as this former commerce official and others in order to get the U.S. ban on ZTE, which was then a huge Chinese tech company, unbanned from the United States.
Yeah.
Commerce official. This is huge. So I covered this story at the White House at the time. And I remember, first of all, I was thrilled about the ban, and then that they just reversed all of a sudden. Everyone was like, what? what is happening here?
Yeah.
And I pressed White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. She had zero response. Nobody in the administration had a response. And we finally know the full backstory, which is Eric Branstad, the U.S. ambassador at that time to China's son, was actively involved in he was getting paid something like $75,000 a month on retainer from this firm connected to the Chinese government in order to pressure the Commerce Department, where he used to work until previously before that, in order to get ban on ZTE lifted. Straight up corruption. Swamp. That's all it is. And
completely grotesque.
It's disgusting. And like I said, what I love about their headline, they were like, you want to talk about Hunter Biden? This is China Man's real. Look, I want to talk about Hunter Biden, but you can't talk about Hunter if you're not willing to call out Eric, not willing to call out Larry Kudlow, because these people are just as corrupt.
That's exactly right. And in fact, I mean, so this story is sort of typical of what goes on in administrations, this kind of influence peddling. And what we've seen in the Trump era is all of it just becomes like a little bit more brazen
it's just
and
stupider.
A little bit more obvious and a little bit stupider. So you have the president literally switching positions on Twitter on the ZTE ban, and everyone's scratching their heads like, what happened here? And then it comes out, unsurprisingly, that you had this influence peddling relationship. Someone got to him, and there you go.
Yeah, and this is a big shot guy in Iowa. Even right now, he works for the Trump campaign. Former governor, son of the former governor. Apparently, he's very connected. If you want to win Iowa, you have to know this guy. Well, turns out he's in the pocket of the Chinese, just like a lot of other people.
There you go.
There we go.
All right, more Rising for you after this.